Hi, and welcome back to our short videos on business studies catered to A-levels students, AS and A2. Today we will look at Chapter 3 of Unit 1, which is size of businesses. And we're going to look at why is it important and how to measure those business sizes. Now, before we look at what is the use of measuring business size, it's also important to know who wants to, who would benefit from knowing about the sizes of this business. So in a broad category, we can define them into the business itself or the business managers, and what are they looking for when they know about a particular size of a business. Well, it helps them to look at their competition, basically how other businesses are faring in terms of their sales and how much impact they're making into the market. Also to look at the competition, right, the performance of the business relative to the market, and also to make important decisions, or what kind of decisions, business decisions in terms of whether or not to increase prices or to, well, reduce prices, right, to help the business perform better. Now, another party that would really want to know about how businesses are doing generally would be the government, because they want to know how the growth of businesses, are progressing, both for small, medium enterprises as well as large businesses. Why? They want to be able to provide support to them, mostly in terms of financial support, if possible, to help them sustain their business in terms of obtaining a bank loan, for example, so that they could use the cash to actually expand the business or to help small medium enterprises in any way they can. How will this benefit the government? Well, it helps when the businesses grow and they're able to expand. They do contribute to the government in terms of tax or corporate tax, and this is how the government too would benefit. Now, besides business managers and governments, there are also other stakeholders that are very, very important, and they would also want to know what happens to a business and why size matters. So you'll also need to consider looking at why employees would find a business size important, shareholders, as well as customers. Now, they all may have slightly different views, interests, depending on what they are looking for in a particular business and why knowing a size of a business matters. For that, I would like you to research on your own and find out what could be the important factors to consider for them when they look at a business size. What is in it for them? Now, one of the ways to measure the size of business is the simplest one of looking at the total of sales or sales revenue or sales turnover that a business makes in a particular year, right? So a simpler way to do it is because you would be able to look at the yearly financial statements that a business releases over the years and to compare between one year to another and see whether or not there is an increase. Another method is through the company's shares or looking at market capitalization. All right, what does this mean? We're looking at the total value, market value of a business based on the outstanding shares that they have. And how do you know how big this is? There is a formula which is looking at the current share price versus the number of shares that a company has, all right, or being bought by the public for that matter. So this is quite volatile as it depends on how the share prices are doing or the stock market is doing. So although a company may have a great number of outstanding shares, the value of those shares is dependent upon the current share price. In terms of market share, where many students may be confused between market capitalization and market share. So a distinctive feature is the word capitalization, market capitalization referring to share price, and market share here refers back to sales, right? But it compares a company's total sales versus the overall sales made in the industry. So we're trying to look at how much of a pie does one company have a stake over versus all the other businesses in the same industry. All right. We also could look at another simpler form of measure, which is looking at how many employees does a company have. Now, this could be a little bit subjective because a small company, a big company with maybe but only fewer employees may be dependent on more machines rather than human beings. So it may be a little bit subjective in defining the size of a business. But it's a simpler way of looking at how big a company is by just looking at the number of employees they employ. In terms of capital employed, now this refers to machineries, right? How much a company spends on capital equipment, right? By taking loans to employ capital or equipments in the company. Now, a straight answer would be a company that uses more machines should be more larger in size, but it also depends on companies who may not be too large with lesser employees but more capital equipment. So it may not be a greatest measure of measuring the size of a particular business. So there you go, we have 5 different types of measurements to see how a business grows, and it is useful to note that with compared within the same industry versus it would be useful as compared to comparing a company that works that focuses on making shoes versus a company that or industry that focuses on F&B, so that would be a contrast in terms of comparison, and it is hard to really look at the size of a business when it's also affected by the price of the shares, all right, or the greater use of capital equipment versus employees, all right. These are the things to consider when you're looking at answering questions related to measuring the size of business. So let's summarize what we have learned, and I think from this last slide you should be able to take note of important key factors when you complete your revision on size of business. Why measuring business size is its importance to business managers, governments, and other stakeholders, as well as the ways to measure business size, such as through sales revenue, market share, market capitalization, and capital employed, as well as number of employees. This is the end of today's very short lecture. I would encourage you to read the blog if you have interest in reading instead of listening to videos or watching to videos. And till we meet again in the next class, have a very pleasant day ahead.